Hey, it's Dennis from Voiceflow, and today I was joined by Tahsim to talk about the CX metrics for AI agents. We went through 12 detailed metrics through the crawl, walk, and run phases to implement your AI agents. We also talked about a detailed financial model that you can copy and paste for your next project. So here's the recording, and enjoy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis. I lead machine learning here at Voiceflow. I've been with the company for the past 3 years. You might have seen me online through a number of different series, whether it's the AI Blueprint, our AI research series, or some other talks that I've done. I'm also joined here by Tahsim, who leads our AI CX practice here, co-founder of TICO and support extraordinaire. So hand it over to Tahsim to introduce himself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Been here also just under 3 years, half of the brains behind TICO, and excited to build a new workforce with AI agents. We built TICO, automating 96% of customer support. So excited to share a little bit more about that and dive deeper into some of the programming we have planned today.
Awesome. So it's always fun to start things off to see who's here today. So have a bunch of large companies here, a lot of teams who are building with AI, large and small. So we just want to highlight that because AI agents in the customer experience and support space are top of mind. So for today, we're going to go through a number of different topics. We'll go through some of your takes on CX and support metrics. Then we're going to go through the general philosophy that we've had to sort of set the stage on CX as a product. We'll go through some key metrics, deep dive into some of the support ones, and then close out with some financial cases and modeling to really reflect the impact of those metrics. So Tahsim, we got some interesting results for our pre-event polls. Maybe you can talk a little bit about some of these and sort of what folks in the audience are seeing.
Yeah, of course. And I'll take a peek at the poll right after. But essentially, when you think about customer support, whether it's an AI based customer support or just human customer support, there's a few categories I think we can all agree on, mainly ranging from, I think, the most important with customers being happy all the way to gaining ROI from your actual support practice. And obviously, some of the buckets that you see are listed under, but the main ones being, regardless of whether it's an AI agent, quality and latency, accuracy of responses, and overall deflection, and able to kind of automate inquiries or solve them effectively.
Yeah. So a lot of similar things that we've been thinking about with our agents and with our customers as well. Now, what's also interesting is that for folks in the audience as well, we have people who have a number of different roles, whether it's someone wearing multiple hats at a startup or teams who are building together. And we just want to highlight that importance is that when you're building conversational AI agents, whether for customer support or something else, it is a team sport. There's a bunch of tasks that you have to do, whether it's working with the LLMs, working on prompts, designing the workflows, understanding the customers, doing testing, or conversational design. So many things are essential for this. And that's not just an overarching principle. It's actually reflected in metrics that you can measure for customer support. So what's really important here is while CX might be the domain expert and the owner for a lot of metrics, they cannot fully function without the support of other functions. And the success of CX impacts the broader company. So we'll go through each of these metrics in more details, but just see the overlap here with product development, finance, ops, and sales, data science teams, all very important things to consider. So when you're building these collaborative agents, we know that these things span across multiple different channels, interfaces, and integrations. So everybody's build is going to be slightly different, but the goal of this talk is to go through some of the metrics that we think is important that we saw earlier and sort of bridge that complexity and sort of differentiation between each product into a single narrative. So by the end of this talk, we'll have some key conclusions on the metrics that are useful to be tracked, but always in the back of your mind, keep in mind this goal of how can you build AI agents for the support use case to be core products, not just one-off solutions that you can put a check mark beside. So all these metrics will help you get to a product goal, and we'll go through those steps. All right, Tahsim, maybe to get us started, we can talk a little bit about the agent we built, TICO, just to put some framing about the metrics that we'll chat about. So maybe you can walk us through TICO v1 versus TICO v2 and what we've built.
Absolutely. And to set some context here, when we first started with TICO, our main thing was to achieve and automate what we could at the time possible. Of course, the TICO project spanned before the advance of LLMs, but LLMs really allowed us to get to the impressive stage that it is today. But it wasn't always like that. And that's why I love that diagram, circular diagram you shared earlier, Dennis, which is about it's connecting within the organizational teams and making sure you make progress along the way. So TICO V1 was all about the art of the possible. How can we build a conversational AI customer support agent that is able to solve certain parts of our workflow and unlock more time for our customer support human agents? And that's where we started. And essentially, we were thinking about automating FAQs and automating the lowest hanging fruit and then moving upwards towards the different stages. And along the way, we were able to track metrics and results that allowed us to put more buy-in into the project and get more investment within the org because we were able to understand and start granular with a certain use case. So when we were progressing through that stage and we started to automate some of our FAQs, some of the questions that really arose was how do these systems work? How does an NLU work in tandem with AI models? And then we started thinking about that as we started progressing into TICO V2 and V3. So if we go to the next section here, that's where we started thinking about once we saw some actual workflow value from the way we deployed TICO as an AI agent, we started to think about the overall business value. And then we started to think about once we automated those lowest hanging fruits, such as the FAQ or education type inquiries, which is basic tutorial questions, how do we start thinking about the more complex levels of support where users reach out with either vague issues or reach out with a highly complex and technical issue? And how do we ensure that we're able to solve these effectively, timeliness within our SLAs, but also provide that value for our customers, especially with Voiceflow users being users that need to be unblocked to have value out of the platform. That's where we started to focus our energy with TICO V2 and beyond.
Yeah, so it's really interesting here is that TICO followed the architecture that we were following of the agent maturity model, where we go from the initial business case, right, with TICO V1, we go through the architecture, we build out the versions, we prototype and test, we launch, and then we refine. So that's been quite a long journey, more than 2.5 years, but we've learned a bunch through that. And if you're interested in learning more about the TICO deep dives, we do have quite a few videos on our YouTube channel on that. But we're not here to talk about TICO exclusively. We just like to talk in specifics for these segments, right? We don't want to talk about theoretical things. We want to talk about details. So let the fun begin with going into the metrics. So I think at the beginning, when we're thinking about customer experience and customer support, we have this narrative of how can we treat it as a product and as a business. So for this, we typically have this framework of 3 or 4 different things that we want to consider. So the first one is, which use cases do we want to tackle? Do we want to automate parts of customer support, or do we want to do agent augmentation? It really depends on your team, so we'll go through examples for each. We also want to determine which metrics we want to move or maintain. So I put up that slide of 12 or so metrics. You can't focus on all of them at the same time. You have to figure out what to prioritize. And we want to focus on metrics that actually help us iterate and get to success faster, and also provide a clear line of sight for future versions. We never want to be in a place to say, and now what? Right? We want to keep iterating, making that experience better. And we want to make sure that all these things in mind still support some of those foundational support metrics like cost per ticket, cost per interaction. So talk about 2 different use cases here, automation, augmentation. Maybe Tahsim, you can deep dive one, which is a customer use case, another one, which is our internal AI augmentation with TICO.
Yeah, absolutely. And whether it's internally with TICO or with some of our amazing customers that are deploying production grade customer support agents, essentially the results that we saw from implementing a well thought out and well deployed AI agent are pretty substantial. Not only do they impact the frontline metrics, which I would say is things like response time and overall response time, which is the obvious ones, but you start to think more granularly about the resolution time and then the full resolution time overall being almost slashed 3 times because of the way users are now able to get derived value out of your customer support chatbot instantaneously. We have, obviously, if you dive deeper into some of our other TICO sessions, you can see examples where folks are reaching out with technical support tickets with code, and TICO is able to resolve them instantaneously with just diving deeper into their code. And that's something that can't be done efficiently from a human level, since that requires interfacing with engineers or escalating within the support tiers from L2 and L3. So it's pretty impactful to see more of the frontline metrics being impacted while also thinking about the deeper underlying metrics along the way. So not only is it automation, but there's also augmentation efforts. And the last screenshot that you see on the right-hand corner is where we started TICO V2 with agent assist, and then slowly moving into an automated agent. So along the way of crawl, walk, run, we started to think about how do we actually affect the kind of surface level outcomes while diving deeper into deeper workflows.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the takeaway here is that typically people say, let's do some augmentation to start, but you can actually interweave them together. So we started with automation, then augmentation, then into automation, and that keeps alternating along the way. So going back to that framework of which metrics do we want to move versus what we want to maintain. So these are some of the metrics from our end for initial TICO that we want to move, and some metrics that we want to maintain. So move metrics, these are things that we want to improve, some of our own, some examples as well. And the maintain ones are the things that we don't want to change. So one key pillar of building out TICO is that we wanted to make sure customer satisfaction remained the same. It was high to start, and our goal was to keep it flat. If it improved, awesome. But that was not the key goal. So the key goal was to go through some of those move metrics up above to get better response time, better throughput and resolution time, and also minimize the amount of time that we spend answering repeat questions. And we wanted to all do this while maintaining a similar org size as the organization grew. So going through this, I think it's important to understand, like, where do you want to iterate on a metric, and how to identify what's going wrong, right? So initially you might do a release for a proof of concept, and things might not work as intended, right? So if you're doing a pilot, you might see CSAT decrease if the agent isn't doing as well. You might see costs increasing due to too many tokens. You might have some challenges with actually the complex issues being automated. And that's all okay. That's the purpose of a proof of concept and a pilot, is to understand deeply your use case and automation potential, and provides you with clear next steps on top of that. So the first thing is to identify what is happening, what can you improve. Then afterwards, you go through that iteration cycle and work as a team to figure out how can we fix and address these things. And if you look at this as a product approach, this is very aligned with that. You start off with your minimum viable product, and then you iterate and spend time improving. So one of the things that, as we were scaling TICO and V2, is that as volume continued to increase, we saw that cost started to increase as well. So maybe, Tahsim, you can talk us through this and maybe talk about the dip at the end and why that happened, and if that was intentional or unintentional.
Yeah, of course. There's obviously a lot of content on this slide. I'll start off with just saying, when you're thinking about your AI agent thoughtfully, you should be thinking about the different components where the previous slide kind of Dennis covered can be impacted with metrics. So we made it very important to be able to track some of these metrics, such as cost, how we're utilizing our tokens and the efficiency of those tokens, as well as the overall latency, especially that being the hottest kind of metric and the most important metric aside from costs around AI agents. And what was interesting is that the way we built TICO and the way you scale your AI agents is that you're able to kind of deploy new and innovative solutions on top. So a few weeks ago, OpenAI released something known as GPT-4o. Obviously took the internet by storm, but we really wanted to deploy GPT-4o more thoughtfully around using some of its more sped up features. And what we did was, in combination of prompt compression as well as just overall boosting and using a better model, we were able to deploy GPT-4o around that dip that you see in the latency part around the 15th of May. And we were able to see not only latency being almost cut entirely in half, if not even more, but we were able to see overall cost of tokens and the way the tokens are being used go down as well. So two powerful takeaways from the slide. Not only are we able to kind of deploy innovative solutions right as we kind of wish and be able to kind of deploy them, but also having the intricacy and ability to view these analytics and also being able to optimize and kind of make day-to-day decisions based on this.
Yeah. And I think this is important going back to working as a team. So this might be something that a combination of product, CX, and developers and data scientists might care about is how well is the system performing? What are the costs? What are the technological implications here? And one of the things that we did is we tested and evaluated TICO with GPT-4o before releasing, going through that iteration process, even for a new model, to confirm that it worked as expected. So we did that as a modular upgrade, and that worked quite well. Now, for the developers and data scientists in the room, and even from a product perspective, spending time to actually optimize your model or your prompt might not be worth it. So taking a look at this chart, basically we ran some benchmarks. You can read about it on our applied research post, but spending time to optimize prompts or improve them might not actually have positive ROI. So depending on your scale, it might be better just to select a good model and leave it be, rather than spending engineering time or data science time refining it. So with cheaper models are quite easy to manage. Something like using Anthropic Haiku for the Claude 3 model, you can actually get 1 million API calls in for the equivalent of 10 hours of prompt engineering time using costs in North American scales. So you need to get a lot of gains and optimizations for those number of calls. For GPT-4, on the other hand, the ROI is much higher because the model is much more expensive. So you as a business unit need to prioritize based on which models you're using, where it's worthwhile to do what kind of optimizations. Now, getting into a point that Tahsim talked about that was very interesting is that support isn't just sort of a homogeneous item, right? You have different levels of complexity, every tickets, different topics, and so forth. So maybe Tahsim, you can break down this recent excerpt from the TICO tickets that we pulled.
Yeah, of course. So I think when you think about deploying into an expensive model like GPT-4, you expect it to kind of answer and resolve any queries, especially if you put the right data in. Now, what we're thinking about as we're thinking about progressing through TICO and the different levels of automated support is that sometimes there's certain levels of support where an AI agent excels at, and then others where you need a little bit more of an escalation, just like traditional customer support. And similarly, we started to track the effectiveness of TICO directly on our Zendesk responding to customers, where we saw a great breakdown of L1, L2, and L3 support, but really where L1, where TICO was kind of shining, was essentially reducing and eliminating a lot of the L1 support, while also thinking about more granularly about the L2 support with more complex and intricate and also customized specific support to the user. And all in all, we were able to see that not only were our users starting to up level more as they were getting more of their baseline queries kind of resolved, but they were able to start thinking and asking harder questions, which of course some of those escalate to a human, but all in all, it also is up leveling the user base and our kind of personas here. But yeah, there's a great kind of Sankey diagram. Dennis, did you want to talk through that as well?
Yeah, I think I wanted to add, so there's multiple levels to this. So this is data pulled through, I think, a day or two of data. And what it illustrates is that there's actually different levels of TICO, right? So there is what is in-app, what is on our Discord, and that takes care of the vast majority of questions. So if a user actually gets to the point of escalating to email, they usually have a more complex question. So this goes beyond the whole like, oh, how do I do something simple within the product? Like, how do I add a button? this is beyond that. Email support is quite challenging. And what's interesting here is you can see sort of L1 and L2 questions get auto-saved. Some of them get escalated. But for L3 tickets, things that usually require more engineering time, those usually get skipped by TICO. And that's part of that confidence threshold that we built in as a good practice. And the thing to highlight here, a lot of these L1 and L2 issues are billing issues that we've been going through in terms of like somebody wants to upgrade, somebody wants to downgrade. Those typically we want to make sure that a live agent handles, because there's usually complexity and financial implications with that. So every diagram, every automation has context. So we're sharing these details so you can think through like all the edge cases, how they're working. So the other thing we wanted to talk about is ticket automation. So there's a whole spectrum on how you can automate things. You can do full automation or you can do partial automation. So maybe Tahsim, you can share a little bit more here on how you think about this problem and what our AI agents are sort of what we found is easy to automate versus more complex.
Exactly. And it's a great segue here. So when we're thinking about building the AI CX practice of the future, we think less about, even though we broke it down the previous slide about the L1 to L4 support, but more around the categories of issues that we encounter. And what we've noticed is that instead of following the L1 to L4 model, what we're seeing is that there's basically two types of automation we're seeing the way AI agents are deployed within CX. There's full ticket automation, which involves no interference from a human. And then there's partial automation, which is, for example, gathering the required data, gathering the required evidence, and similarly to an L1 support model, providing L1 support before it kind of escalates to kind of a human. And why that's important is to that last point Dennis mentioned, which is around billing issues. When we're dealing with customers' financial status as well, whether it's their funds or their subscription or their account management, that stuff requires a little bit more of a human touch. And that's where we're seeing in terms of full versus partial automation, which will be the next slide. But when we're talking about full automation, the levels of tickets that we're seeing from that are easy to hard in automation are seen here. So obviously when there's a bug and there's something known that is completely going wrong, your knowledge base won't have access to that type of information. So that's where something like that requires kind of human intervention versus the FAQs and educational style inquiries, such as how do I add a button, or my assistant isn't publishing. That type of stuff goes under the easy automation, especially with good knowledge base inputs. And along the spectrum, we see things becoming a little bit more complex, but still being able to be automated, such as technical support, and then as well as various other levels of support. Now, if we go to the next slide, thinking about partial automation, partial automation a little bit deeper, essentially, some of the tickets that you saw, like education FAQs, are fully automated. But now when we think about bugs, technical issues, and billing, as we're progressing through the ticket complexity and agent complexity that we've kind of chatted about in this talk over here, bugs, technical issues, and billing, these are issues that can actually be easily partially automated, whether it's passing variables and data so that the human agent is able to access that data so they don't spend cycles talking with the customer and getting that information. These are the parts of the AI agent workflow that you're actually able to add partial automation, whether it's using LLMs directly, whether it's using logic, or whether it's using NLU. These type of kind of methods and tactics are able to kind of augment the kind of granular and manual effort that goes into kind of tackling some of the tickets that don't require full agent automation or can't substantiate that. So that's where you want to think about your AI agent and your CX as kind of different journeys, different flows, and different categories versus, I would say, the traditional models of support that we've seen from human agents.
Yeah. I think that ticket enrichment is really great. It talks about that augmentation workflow. So for us, what's really interesting, something that Tahsim and the team have built, is that you can see which project a user has issues with, right? It ties into other metadata about the user, which is very helpful. And doing that sort of automated enrichment, right? So the user says, oh, this is broken, right? Having an AI agent follow up and say, okay, but what is broken, right? Like, can you guide me through the process, right? And sort of prompting the human to provide more details that are important. So that kind of automation is very helpful because it helps the human agent focus on what's important and the more challenging tickets. So this is pretty interesting. We're going to show you a breakdown of ticket types based on different timelines. So pass it back to Tahsim to talk through these.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit of a blast from the past. I wanted to showcase to this audience here when we first started off with TICO and embarking onto it. Our human support was spending a lot of cycles, especially when we were kind of a different product back then, guiding users through a lot of issues that could basically be accessed through documentation or videos, where either users had no knowledge that they were available or that they required a little bit more support. And that's why you saw categories such as education and creator kind of come up, as well as one-click publish type issues, and as well as more of those API issues. So a lot of a really healthy breakdown, or unhealthy, I would say, of a lot of different categories of issues. Now, when we started thinking about TICO V1 and beyond, in 2000, around last year, earlier last year, we were a little bit more on the partial ticket agent automation side before we fully deployed an automated AI agent. Now, what you see from these next two diagrams is that certain categories have just totally disappeared as a result. So things like feature requests, things like educational inquiries, they've been slashed, if not totally don't exist anymore. And you start to see prevalence of more of those tickets that require more complexity and a human touch, such as account-related issues, bug reports, and things of that nature. And if you dive deeper into some of those categories like API or NLU CXD issues, you start to see the complexity of those issues have actually gone up as well as a result of your AI agent being able to handle more of the lower complexity and value stuff in the value chain as we continue to optimize. And now this year, when we're looking at some of the breakdown of our customer support issues, we're really seeing some consistency in some of the categories, whether it's API issues, NLU issues, and then obviously the big chunk being bugs and account related issues, which are more of what spends the human time. So it's an interesting paradigm to see some of the business priorities and some of the way operating priorities change as you start to deploy kind of high ROI AI agents into your workforce.
Yeah, it gets interesting here as well, because if we talk about metrics, like traditionally, if it's just an FAQ type question, an agent might be able to go through 300 or 400 tickets a month. But now if you've automated all those easy tickets, an agent might spend their time doing 100 or 150 or 200, right? Because suddenly you're dealing with much more complex things. You need to triage with the product and engineering team. So this is where you have to be very thoughtful about how you measure different metrics and have this sort of enriched data, because otherwise people might start asking, oh, we implemented AI augmentation for our agents. We also automated things. Why is productivity dropping in half? And the answer is, well, it's probably not dropping. Agents just have to deal with much more complex tickets. So it's important to recognize the nuance there. And this is kind of interesting as well, is actually looking at how TICO handles different workflows. So to see, maybe you can talk about the implementation here of how a user journey is mapped through the TICO flow.
Yeah, and it's a great point that you mentioned about going into the nuances, which obviously we've communicated some of the more higher level metrics, but the nuances is where the magic happens, and that's what leads into the kind of higher level, and that's what the team, whether it's myself or Nico, dive deeper into, seeing what goes into the inputs and what the user journey of TICO is. So before and after a customer raises a customer support ticket, which in our kind of world, it would seem like this is like, when we're thinking about AI agents, this is not a favorable outcome if they're raising a ticket, unless it's like a billing or bug related issue. We want to see what journeys and what things that they do before raising a ticket, which is the fourth column that you see on this Mixpanel dashboard. So you can see that users spend some time going through our content, searching through our content, interacting with our assistant, and then of course, like clicking on articles, viewing FAQs, and other events that kind of lead into the support ticket flow. So that allows us to have a better understanding of what users are doing before they reach out to support, so that we're able to optimize different parts of the value chain. So if we see that users are trying to spend a lot of time in FAQs and are not getting what they require, then we're able to kind of dive deeper into optimizing the FAQs a little bit better and augment our knowledge base. And you can see in the future, since we're kind of aggregating this data a bit, this can soon be kind of fed into the future of automated AI agents, which is context. So we're really thinking about the future of how to kind of build the future of AI agents with automation, but going into the intricate inputs is what allows you to kind of have a better understanding of your CX and the overall journey. And diagrams like this or having automated mixed panel dashboards allows you to kind of have that transparency and flexibility, which our tool kind of allows you kind of integrate within any system. So this has been quite helpful for us. This system, as well as the various other ways we kind of look at data and analytics.
Okay. So we talked about metrics. We have the metrics from the top of the hour. Let's talk about the financial side. So I know this is something that folks are thinking about, is how do I build that business case to get to support automation? So the first way to do so is CX is a way to have the voice of the customer input into decisions. And I think a lot of teams and companies talk about this, that CX is the voice of the customer, hence the renaming of customer support to customer experience. But actually having that information and being able to communicate and articulate that is really important. So this is a screenshot of some topics that users are talking about with TICO in our Discord AI agent. And this is something that creates a lot of opportunity, is for this automation to feed back into product context, improve the product, understand where time and investment needs to be made, whether it's on the documentation side, automation side, or product side. So this automation owned by customer experience provides a direct input into other parts of the business, whether it's the marketing growth or product dimension. So becoming somebody at the table who can articulate these insights is very valuable and provides a lot of credibility to the CX function. Now, the other component here is the financial case. Traditionally, customer support in CX has been, how can you service all these tickets as quickly as possible? Now, this is where you'll have to make this decision about, do you hire more people or should you focus on automation? So from our perspective, for these pretty high complexity tickets over email that we've been getting, we've seen a growth. So 200 kind of pre-TICO to 800 now. And this ignores the thousands of requests we get in-app and so forth that we've already automated. So even when the business grows and has implemented automation, you have this question to ask, where do you invest your resources? Do you go from sort of 60% automation to 70%, or in our case, are you pushing higher and higher into the 90s? Or should you continue to grow that support team to make sure that you can further reduce those resolution rates, keep up that personal care? So it's usually a combination. It's not just AI agent automation for everything to reduce cost. It's just being thoughtful about what the right tool is at the right time. Now, beyond being the voice of the customer, there's 4 very specific ways that CX can help with revenue generation. So we talked about cost optimization. What about on the revenue side? So right now, especially in the age of AI, where products are becoming easier to build, right? We've probably seen demos of build an application, code something with AI. It's important to have a strong product differentiation, and that can happen with excellent support. So something that we've seen with customers, and personally that we valued with our vendors and partners, is how well and how responsive are they to questions, comments, feature requests, etc. And AI automation provides that way to stand out, especially in a either B2C or B2B context, and provides that extra level of customer support and care. There are whole brands built on this premium idea. And the direct impact of that is increased NPS, so Net Promoter Score, which is a key metric that many organizations track, that help with revenue growth. The more people are talking about your product in a positive way, the more growth you'll have through those indirect channels. There's also 2 other aspects here. I'll actually pass it over to Tahsim to talk about that, ways to actually generate revenue from support itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, a couple of things when you're thinking about the macro kind of opportunity when you're generating revenue through CX. Of course, when you're going through different tiers, for example, at Voiceflow, we have different pricing tiers. You can start to think about the different ways you deploy your support across those orgs. And a lot of customers do upgrade based on more premium levels of support. So as you kind of invest more into your support offering, that becomes a pretty lucrative opportunity for for upgrading your customers. And more specifically, the upsell, cross-sell opportunities are pretty impactful. I think we hear about that a lot in the chatbot space, but we did a pretty small experiment last year when we first rolled out AI tokens for monetizing kind of the interactions that folks are having with our AI agent models, which obviously aren't free. We added a bit of a currency, and we beta tested that kind of commerce opportunity through TICO itself, and users were actually able to check out tokens directly from TICO, the assistant. So it served as a bridge kind of rev gen opportunity for us, but more effectively to even just validate a business case that allowed the whole org to kind of invest further into our AI token model, which is now completely productized. So you can start to think about upsell, cross-sell opportunities and use your kind of AI agent as a breeding ground to start interacting directly to users and being able to provide that opportunity. And then furthermore, once we've completely deployed a tokenized system, we were actually able to add specific levers, like if a user is reaching 80% or 90% of their token usage, we friendly prompt them through TICO to upgrade as well. So lots of opportunities as you start embedding your AI agent deeper into your workflow, and as you embed more teams, there's really opportunities to kind of validate different business initiatives and operational workflows.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think the goal here isn't just to make an extra dollar or two from your customers, or even that customer experience should be responsible for all these things. These are just opportunities to experiment and find ways to make that business case as well. Every organization is different. Every organization has different expectations of customer experience. So an excellent opportunity to think about these things. Now, the other interesting point is when we often have this conversation, and it's a little bit of a taboo in the industry, especially customer experiences. What happens to the team when you automate customer experience or customer support? Do you lay off hundreds of folks if you're a big organization, or a few folks? Maybe Tahsim, you can talk a little bit about our strategy within Voiceflow and how we've been advising customers.
Of course. I think the way I think about this topic as we progress into the AI agents in the modern workforce is that it's giving the power actually back to the support team. What happens, as you've seen with some of the data that we presented today, is that the support team is now focused on more of the higher complexity, higher impact, and higher visibility issues versus some of the ones that can kind of be squared away and put away through an AI agent. So the folks are actually having more, are upscaling more naturally since they're dealing with some of the more harder issues, but they're also able to be more of the co-pilots and pilots of their support experience versus just being ticket takers or ticket orders, and being a little bit more deployed intentionally. So obviously that's the kind of the popular kind of narrative here, but to think about it further, it actually serves as an opportunity to upskill the team further. I mentioned when we first deployed an automated agent on Zendesk that we first started off with Agent Assist, and Agent Assist is a very popular concept within kind of the customer support space for years now. But with LLMs and the ability to deploy AI agents, we were able to see meaningful ways to deploy Agent Assist and actually being able to provide customers and reps the knowledge that they need. And furthermore, that's led into overall increases in our team capabilities, capacity, and just being able to onboard faster. Each time we've onboarded a new kind of support person, they were able to instantaneously onboard within the week because of the ability and the resources that they have available. So that's just some of the small snippets of how you can kind of start to augment your support team with an AI agent, but also allowing them to be a little bit more thoughtful and have domain level expertise naturally.
Yeah. So in the next portion here, I think it's really important to go back to that philosophy we mentioned at the beginning. How do you treat customer experience as a product, right? So customer experience becomes the product owner, like in our case, of this AI automation, which is very powerful because they have the expertise. Teams and leaders like Tahsim have that expertise to deliver this experience. Now I'll go through a couple other metrics, which I think is interesting. So what we actually found is that we did a quick pull of our data, is that people actually churn, looking at financial metrics, meaning that they drop off, they end their Voiceflow subscription when they don't have support. So support actually helps reduce the level of churn. It helps guide customers through and then provides a better opportunity. So this is actually quite surprising for us. We thought this would be more even or actually favored. If somebody reaches out for support, they'll be more likely to churn. So something that we found interesting. And if we normalize this churn level across the past 3 months, if somebody actually reached out to support and put in that effort, we found that they were 6x less likely to churn compared to if they didn't. Now, we have a few hypotheses. We still need to investigate this further, which again goes through that iterative state. We have 2 main hypotheses right now. One, this is because of a commitment or care for the product. They want to keep using it. They have some blockers. They reach out. The second potential explanation is that we do prioritize support for enterprise customers. So enterprise customers in general are less likely to churn based on their use cases as compared to somebody trying out the product for the first time. So we'll be doing a further deep dive into these pieces of information. So something that we'll talk more about. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the financial model. And what's important here is when we talk about metrics, whether it's product metrics, financial metrics, or other metrics, they usually all lead up to either making the business more money or saving it money, whether in the short term or long term. So based on all these metrics, we can put together some forecasting models that CX leaders can use to better articulate what the benefit is of AI automation. So let's get into an example. So here I have a spreadsheet that in a chart that projects what are our costs and opportunities to generate revenue in the next year, sort of starting in July 2024 into September 2025. And this chart shows what are the costs for business as usual, so just having a regular support team as compared to an AI agent. And I've actually hid a lot of this complexity away. I'll reveal it in a little bit. But what you can do here is you can adjust this chart, and we'll be sharing this template with everybody on what are the key levers that'll impact this ROI. So we see here that we break even sort of within 8 months, mainly due to the net new build that's needed. But let's say we adjust some of these levers here. Let's say that the number of tickets that a team can do right now might be lower. Let's say it's a more complex product. We actually see that the ROI shifts earlier and you start getting profitable in a greater magnitude. Similarly to that, let's say that you want to automate not 60%, but 90%. You see also a much steeper curve here and a much bigger differentiation. So you can play around with this chart to better match what you're seeing within your own use case. But if we sort of peel back the curtain for this chart, you can see we have the different numbers outlined here, right? The number of support employees needed, the number of channels that we handle, the costs for building, and so forth. So this is something that you can take back with your team, work together on, and see how it matches what you're seeing right now. Now, flagging a couple of other items here. This is actually a pretty mature use case where we have 3 different channels for handling customer support and experience. We have the bot, the AI agent, we have a live agent, and in this example, we also include a call center because many large organizations do have that, or if they have more complex items. So as part of this, we have generated some metrics here, a mock use case that you can go through and change the numbers for, and have generated some visualizations here that you can run to sort of map this flow of the resolution rates. So we've showed this diagram in the past for TICO, but you can also generate your own based on the values of generating tickets, whether it goes directly to the AI agent, how well it resolves it, how many tickets are redirected to the live agent or the call center. So just some tooling here for you to play around with, adjust, measure, and help prepare that business case. And we recommend that you fill out some of these key fields here so you can actually keep track of the metrics that we have shared. So this will be going out after the call, and we're happy to dive deeper with everybody on the call into this to this diagram, Tahsim and I would be available for that. So yeah, these are the key examples we talked through for this financial model, and something that you can reuse in the future. Now, we've talked a lot about information here, and something important that we've shared before is that when you're building any kind of AI agent experience, you should go through this crawl, walk, run model, where you start off with lower complexity and get more complex along the way. And this also reflects the metrics that we believe you should be tracking, and every team is going to have their own metrics. So for us, the crawl metrics that we wanted to measure were time to first response, time to resolution, automation rate, cost per ticket, and the rate of AI agent escalation. So these were the core metrics that we said when we build this agent out, these are the things we want to measure and compare. As we've been going through that journey in the walk stage, we started doing more complex things like breaking down tickets by support tier, looking at resolution rates, tagging topics, going through the bug bank and looking at repeat issues, forecasting some support volume, and also looking at AI agent costs and optimizing those. We've demonstrated quite a few of these concepts before. Again, we wanted to provide those examples. Now, as you get into the much more mature space, when you have all of those metrics automated, you're generating them, you're making business decisions off of them, you can get into the run stage, where you have things like a proactive support copilot, you're looking at churn forecasting and revenue opportunities based on support. You're comparing across multiple channels and understanding what types of questions and concerns you're getting from each of those and how you can implement and automate those. And finally, how do you actually help your product and engineering team have better operational efficiency by triaging and tracking repeat questions? So a lot of metrics to track, a lot of decisions to make here. I know that was, I think, the most popular question here is agreeing on key metrics. So as a team, you can go through these crawl, walk, run metrics, go through that table of responsibilities for each of the metrics as well and contributions, and make that decision. Now, we wanted to save some time for questions, but we do have some key takeaways right now. So key takeaways is to make sure you treat CX as a product and the automation that allows you to get to the most success. Build with a team, right? Team like within Voiceflow, we have a multifaceted team who works together on that. Within your organization, it's the same: developer, designer, product owner, CX. Follow that pathway across the different levels of complexities of metrics and track them. And make sure to measure and iterate based on priority. You can't do all of it at once. Take some time to do so. And the final thing, I think, or the second final thing, is make sure that you have the financial data to prove and validate your case, right? All these metrics are important, but when you go up to the head of finance, CEO, COO, it's really important to be able to communicate why this project matters. And finally, start building, launch those pilots, move forward with it. We talked a lot about metrics and conceptual things here, but the best way to learn and see results is to build. So that wraps up our portion of the presentation. Happy to answer any questions in the chat.
So I see a few questions. Dennis, if you maybe wanted to look at Charles' questions, I'll quickly answer Shivangi's question. I apologize if I'm not saying that right. But essentially, yeah, there's a number of ways you can use live chat within your AI chatbot. I would say if you're thinking about your traditional support practice, that's where we started, where we were on intercom, just responding directly on customers. As you can see with scaling complexities and some of our other TICO sessions, that process is starting to become very expensive and didn't scale very well. Now, there are demos and kind of resources available so that you can connect and hook up different workflows to your live chat. So if you're looking for escalations to a human agent through live chat, that's completely and technically possible. But you can absolutely use the live chat feature. I would say that we really focus on automation first, and that's been more compounded ROI, as we kind of discussed in this presentation.
And I think as a business decision that makes sense. Like, do you want to enable live chat? How do your SLAs matter? Like, if people ask to do live chat late at night for your team, right? What is the consequence of that as well? So a lot of things to consider there. Question here on Chat Dash. I think this was from the Discord slide. Yes, sometimes our users talk about other products, integrations, and so forth. So sometimes as a product team, you have to figure out and investigate why certain topics are talked about. So I think there was another one, I cut it out of the diagram, but people were talking about lunch and their favorite food at some point as well. And that's something that we had to clean up. So like that's all fine and dandy. There's some interesting discussion there that happens. We've probably all seen interesting tickets come in through different channels, but it's something that you have to do on the data prep side. So whether it's the CX team itself or getting help from other parts of the team. I know we went through a lot of content. I think we had 46 slides or something. So we will be sharing this presentation with the group. We'll be sharing that template as well. And if you need some time to digest and think about those questions, Tahsim and I are available for a call afterwards. So we'll reach out about that as well. So going forward, take some time, go through those metrics, think about how you can implement them, and we'll be happy to assist. Two more questions. Okay, those come in. Could we implement elements of the spreadsheet more widely? Yes, you'll have the spreadsheet. You can change it, improve it, add more metrics. I added, I think, like 8 different metrics in there, but if you want to add all 12, that's an option. And the second question here, what's the point when prompt optimization is not enough? Should we use local models? So the costs, if you saw there, are quite low in practice. Before prompt optimizations, around $30 a day. After that, around $10. So those are still very cheap compared to human costs. So APIs are still the lowest way to get up and running. Once you get to a certain volume, when you're looking at thousands of dollars per day, then you can consider other options. But you do really need to consider total cost of ownership, where having somebody look at a model or deploying it does cost time and money. So, all right. Thank you everybody for your questions. Appreciate it. We'll be in touch soon, and we'll be hosting more of these AI blueprints to get into the details for your AI agent strategy. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.